This is the best.
Do you hear me?
Of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Well, let's get to some headlines since we said goodnight last night. And what about it? They won the national championship. I mean, the real one, that is. So why not Alabama receive 150 stone national championship rings? This is what it looked like as they came in. Certainly, the maker of those rings doing well off of Alabama. That is the fifth time in 9 years they've made rings for the Crimson Tide. Yeah, it's never happened before in the poll. Meanwhile, the losers, the UCF unveiled the national championship rings. What did they do? They beat Auburn in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. Bo Scarborough, not Bo Scarborough. Yeah, that is Bo Scarborough. Bo, what about it? Bo's got some rings. No fake rings. No UCF rings. The real rings. I'm done talking about anything other than the national champs because I think too much of that has gone on. I started it many months ago with UCF. I'll let others finish it, but we all know where the real national champion resides, and that is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They were at the White House 2 weeks ago. I didn't see anyone else being honored by the president for winning the college football national championship. Let's talk about today. Lars Anderson from The Athletic. Talk about spring football, what crowds mean. Cole Cubelic, new show on WJOX in Birmingham, three-man front, precedes us on our one of our flagship stations for a very long time, and Wes Rucker on Jeremy Pruitt. How did his conversation about the fans go over in Big Orange Country? Read a lot of commentary up there. One by Marvin West, a longtime sports columnist, used to be at the News Sentinel, said that Jeremy Pruitt should have been thanking fans if there was any mistake made. It was by him doing away with a fan day beforehand, signing autographs and bringing a lot of young people into the program. That did not happen this year. One reason why maybe the crowd was not up to Jeremy Pruitt's wishes. Anyway, welcome to Tuesday. Appreciate Peter Burns for being in here yesterday. Peter's been here twice in the last couple of days, and I've been the same state both times. Last Thursday, as I told you, Friday we were Mark Cubelic and I were in Athens doing some stories, and last night I was in Atlanta hosting a banquet, American Football Coaches Association banquet. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but saw a lot of great legendary coaches. We were at the Georgia Aquarium last night, so that's why Peter was here yesterday. So let's get to phone calls here at 855-242-7285, 855-242-7285. I know the big conversation everywhere yesterday involved Jalen Hurts, so a wide variety of conversation on exactly what is going to happen. I know Booger was here last night saying he thinks Jalen Hurts will be the starter. I was talking to Andy Staples yesterday as well from Sports Illustrated. He doesn't think he'll be there at all. So that's how far two of the most respected voices in college football on completely different sides of the coin on Jalen Hurts' future. A lot of other stories going on. I heard a lot about the Dogs last night in Georgia, especially the new quarterback Fields. We'll talk about that as well. Your phone calls, as I mentioned, 855-242-7285. That is where we are, and let's start with Thomas. Good afternoon, Thomas.
Yeah, Paul. I'm a big Tide fan, and I just want everybody to understand that Alabama has never based our season on one player. So the Jalen Hurts controversy, I mean, it's up in the air with me because Coach Nick Saban is
hey, hold on a second, Thomas. I mean, one thing we try to do here is keep it real. Let's not blame a bunch of people. Do you realize why this story became a big deal? Do you have any idea?
No.
I'll explain it to you. his father made it a big deal. Jalen Hurts' father, in the interview with Matt Hayes, we had Matt on Friday night, said, if my son doesn't win the starting job, he will become the biggest free agent in college football history. It was already a big story because of Tua coming in and saving Alabama's season in the national championship game, but Coach Hurts is the one who turned this into a DEFCON 1 controversy. So I asked the callers tonight, say whatever you want, but let's not start blaming this person or that person, because ultimately Mr. Hurts turned this into a big deal, a very, very big deal. I've never heard a father talk that way about his son. Well, maybe Earl Woods did in talking about Tiger Woods. Let's go to Steve in Knoxville. Steve, welcome to the program and good afternoon.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Yeah, I was hanging around Knoxville and Neyland Stadium this weekend, and I was kind of wondering myself something you said about Jeremy Pruitt talking about these fans, and, you know, I was a little surprised. In fact, I thought the turnout was actually really good for an orange and white game. It didn't break the Guinness Book of World Records, which they have before, but Jeremy, yeah, I think you're right. He's going to have to Knoxville is the easiest town in the world to dupe people in, okay? We'll take it forever.
But Steve, see, they announced 60-something thousand. I mean, let's say conservatively there were 50,000 people there, which 50,000 people or 40,000 or 60, it doesn't matter. That's still a lot of people for a spring game. I do, and I haven't talked to Jeremy Pruitt, and I wish he would clarify his comments if he feels like he was taken out of context. I think they worked hard, at least the school did, because we had Jeremy on and we were instructed, hey, ask him about the spring game. We want a big crowd. Yeah, sure you want a bigger crowd because it helps your product. But overall, I think it came off, and some of the coaches with whom I spoke to last night in Atlanta were all very critical of him. Now, privately, I might add. But I think you really ought to thank the fans who showed up. Don't ever bite the hand that feeds you when you're a football coach.
Yeah, that's kind of stopped feeding you as much as it used to. Because,
exactly.
I mean, Knoxville's been through a disaster for 20 years. And we're just tired. And you come in here and start giving us a hard time. I mean, you know, you're right. I just wonder if he was trying to fire the fan base up, okay, but it seemed to backfire a little bit because, you know, we're going to have to see a football team for once, I think. You know, when the fans stopped leaving, I mean, you used to pack that stadium with 100,000 people in a losing season, not so much anymore.
No, and by the way, thanks for the call, Steve. Embrace your fans. And I asked Jeremy Pruitt this question. What did he do to try to enhance the crowd? Did he do anything special? Or did he just expect people to show up to watch a product which has not been very good in recent years? Put a good product on the field, and the fans will follow. I've spent 4 years of my life in Knoxville. They will support a winner. They'll support a team that fights hard. Just let the PR people and the marketing people and the ticket people worry about the crowds. You worry about getting Tennessee back to a legitimate bowl game again. How about that, Jeremy?
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Matt is next up in Georgia.
How was Atlanta, Paul?
I tell you what, I think you know my affinity for Birmingham because I lived there a great deal, but
yeah,
I'm getting pretty close to equal affinity for the city of Atlanta. I think that's becoming one of my favorite places.
Yeah, Atlanta's a great place. It's a great place. A couple things. You can be surprised what I'm going to say here, but I feel bad for Jalen Hurts. I'm tired of these fathers, and extreme case point example, Lonzo Ball's dad or whatever his name is. I mean, you can coach your son, you can prepare your son, but let your son do the talking. You don't have to go out and make comments because it puts so much pressure on the kid to live up to it. He didn't have to say that, you know. I mean, he just needs to shut up and let Jalen be Jalen. I mean, it just makes it harder for Jalen to go.
I agree totally with you. Yeah, I mean,
It's just, and then I mean, and you look at the ball kid in L.A. I mean, look what it's just guys destroy. I mean, he's destroying his kids. The second thing I got to say is I'm gonna keep reiterating this point. And you went on the other day and you said, yeah, Matt, I asked around about Athens, and you're not the idiot we think you are, or whatever you said. But I can tell you from firsthand knowledge, and a lot of people in Athens, Jeremy Pruitt has a temperament, a bad temperament. He would have gotten fired the year Mark Richt got let go if they didn't have intentions of letting Mark Richt go. If things don't go Jeremy Pruitt's way, he gets very volatile. Kevin Butler came out and said publicly that after the Georgia-Florida game, Jeremy's last year, that he had never seen a coach or a personnel act the way he did. And this is another point, case and example of Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, $65,000 for University of Tennessee spring game, to me, considering the product they put out, is awesome. He ought to be praising those fans, because as soon as he wins 10 ball games, that place will be packed. So, I'm just telling you, I think Jeremy's got a big temperament problem. I think you're going to come see it out. And Georgia did great on Saturday, 82,000 plus. I was picking on Alabama, but Alabama still had 70,000 plus. So, and it's crazy. It's awesome that the SEC has those strong numbers for spring games. Nobody in the country. I think Nebraska had more than 90,000, but it just says a lot about the SEC. But I'll shut up now, Paul, and go Dogs.
Listen, Matt actually made some points there. It was interesting. First of all, I do believe most universities enhance their spring game numbers a little bit. I've read some accounts of the Tuscaloosa crowd, of the Knoxville crowd, where veteran journalists have said the numbers looked a little more charitable than they were. But beside that, and that really is not the critical factor here, you should be happy with whatever you get. That is not the head coach's job, and I think we made that point very clear.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
War Daddy is up next in Knoxville. How are you, War Daddy?
Hey, I'm doing great, Paul. I'm going to have to start calling in a little bit more. I got a KJB interrogation calling in on who's War Daddy Zach? Who are you?
Hey, I mean, you leave this show for a couple of weeks, and we have 6 new people working the board.
Yeah, what about that? That's okay, though. I call in when I got something to say, and when I don't, I sit back and listen and laugh and enjoy myself. But, Paul, I gotta weigh in on this Jeremy Pruitt thing, and another thing that kind of bothered me. Listen, I'm behind Jeremy Pruitt. He's what we need. He's no nonsense. I believe in time he'll get us on the right track. But quite frankly, I would like to believe that if the guy had the chance to do that segment over, he would reword what he said. I really believe he was really trying to get after his team, because if you read the whole context, he was talking about how some players out there quit, and he was disappointed with them, how they didn't compete, and he wound up working that in with the fan base. Now, I heard this yesterday, Paul, on the Sports Source with John Pennington here locally, and you correct me if it's wrong, Paul. Back in, was it 2003, that the Crimson Tide was coming off a losing season, like a 4-loss season? Does that sound right?
Well, 2003, they would be coming off of a 10-win season.
Okay, well, must have misunderstood that.
The next year, they would be coming off of a 9-loss season.
Okay, that must have been it. And they were pointing out how that the following spring game, the 8-day game, they had a little over 30,000 people in the stands.
I think that's right.
For a spring game. And it's just like Jeremy just did not register the fact this is a program wandering in the desert, been through more coaches than Carter's got liver pills, and yet these people, they announced at 60-something thousand. Let's say it was 45. That's fine. I mean, they were there. They were enjoying themselves, and he just got a little negative, and it struck me the wrong way. But Paul, don't you think if he had to do it over again, he would reword?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's why I would. No one's asking me. I don't work for the University of Tennessee, but it's Tuesday now. This has been going on since 4 o'clock on Saturday. It seems like you got a lot of smart people to work there. There's been all this conversation about it. Why not correct the record if that's not what he meant?
Well, that's a good point. That's a fair point. Now, I guarantee you, I would have to think that Philip Fulmer had to call him aside at some point and say, Jeremy, you're my boy. I'm behind you. You're doing it the right way, but you don't want to start criticizing our fan base. They've been there for
here's the problem, Wardaddy, and we're now talking on Tuesday afternoon. I've read articles about it. You've listened to talk shows about it, and it's getting late in the day to correct the record, and as this story gets passed along, I was on a show yesterday. They said, "Hey, what about Jeremy Pruitt calling out the fans?" And and that's not exactly true. It's not really close to being true, as you said. But that becomes the narrative, and that's why someone listening right now. It's not like we're not on some television set in the football office, suggest that he makes issue a statement. Do whatever you want to do. I don't care. But don't let it fester if it's not true. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a great point, Paul. Listen, I know he's a no nonsense type of guy, and we do need that. Okay, but at the same token, I think coming from Nick Saban, and if you've been around Nick Saban and he's your mentor, Nick can say anything he wants to about fans. He's talked about fans leaving the game early.
Oh, yeah.
He's been critical of them. But he's Nick Saban.
Well,
he's earned the right to do it.
I mean, by the way, I thought he was completely wrong when he called out the fans a couple of years ago. But, trying to argue down Nick Saban, you might as well give up because listen, I've used more extreme examples, but no matter what Saban says, there's 100,000 people that will call in and defend him.
Yeah, and Jeremy Pruitt needs to know this. The opening game, even over in Charlotte against West Virginia, Big Orange Nation will be there in grand numbers. You can count on that.
Sure.
And then in the open game, there'll be 102, 455 there. And Jeremy just needs to realize that Tennessee fans were aching, we're hurting for a winner, for a team that goes out there and at least shows us they're going to fight for victory, fight for championships, and he won't have to worry about who's in the stands.
No, you're
going to be there.
I know that, Ward. Hey, great to hear from you again. We're up against a break. We need to rush out of here because when we come back, call your friends. I hear the siren about to blast off. There's a Tammy alert. She's next.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
Tammy is next. Tammy?
Paul?
Yes?
Hey, I want to comment on this Tennessee thing because you know good and well that coach that they got now came from Alabama, right, under Nick Saban?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why is it that he can talk about the fans, he can do this and he can do that, but when Nick Saban did it, nobody said anything. So how about you telling me why everybody's making a big deal about it because the Tennessee coach has something to say?
Well, because Tammy, the answer is easy.
What is it? He's not Nick Saban. He's not Alabama.
The answer is that the media is prohibited from criticizing Nick Saban. It is simply verboten.
Well, I'm here to tell you that man up there can say what he wants. He's the head coach, and if he wants to say what he wants to say about the fans, he can say what he wants to say about the fans. He wants more people there. That's what he wants. And the reason he said what he said, because you ain't going to get no more people there if he ain't got them boys quit playing. He just told you why. The boys quit playing. The boys on the Tennessee team quit. So if the boys quit and they won't play, how does he think he's going to get his fans in there to represent the school that he's supposed
Tammy,
to?
my question to you, and this is maybe a better, why do you care about any of this?
Because because y'all sitting up here criticizing this coach, wanting him to come on here. He ain't got to do nothing except coach them boys is quitting. That's all he's got to do is coach them boys is quit. Because of one thing, if he was involved with the coach and them boys was quitting.
Hey, Tammy, may I ask you a question? Tammy, come on. May I ask you a question?
Ask me a question. You ask me you want
Okay,
to ask me, Paul?
I heard from you at the end of last season after the Georgia win and after the Alabama win, but I did not hear from you after the Georgia loss and the UCF loss. Can you explain those two games?
Yeah, our boys quit. War damn Eagle. Make me sick.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Philip is in Georgia, and you're on the air. Hey, Philip.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
We are doing great. Thank you for the call.
Well, I'm on a little bit of a hot streak lately. I've been calling the show for about 10 years and finally got on with Peter Burns last week and really enjoyed that. But I wanted to talk about your mock draft of callers.
Yes, what about it?
I feel like you need to expand. Quit dealing with Tammy and all them and get some new, fresh callers.
I agree.
Really expand your ratings, and let's get it going. I want to be that caller.
You know, I have to be honest, and everywhere I go, people ask me about Tammy, and I know this will sound maybe I don't appreciate her more or disappointed, but I just don't think Tammy is really that good of a caller.
Well, I enjoy
she
Tammy.
screams, and she can be funny sometimes, but there was no redeeming quality in that call she just had. I mean, that was like, if you rank that compared to Jim from Tuscaloosa, that was like Jim's 987th best call.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed it because she's worried about Tennessee spring game having 65,000 people, and Auburn had about 19. I'm a Georgia fan. And she's worried about that. She needs to worry about how Georgia whipped their butts in the SEC championship. She needs to concentrate on that, not worry about Tennessee fans.
Well, I'll tell you what, Philip, I think you've got a shot to make the list. Keep going.
Well, you kind of stumped me there.
Yeah, well, that's not. By the way, that did not help. I mean, a good caller has to be versatile. Unless your name is Darriel, where no matter what the host throws at him, he's sticking to the same script. Darriel is up next. What do you say, Darriel?
Absolutely. I would say that, in my opinion, Tammy's had one signature call in her career, and that was the SEC mascot. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you just nailed exactly what she is.
Listen, I feel like you're a pretty good connoisseur of callers. You've been around. I mean, wouldn't you agree with me that she really is somewhat of a one-trick pony?
I couldn't have said it any better, Paul. She screams, and she can be funny at times. But at times, she can go major overboard with stuff, too. I mean, she is who she is. Paul, I told the Bears a long time ago, I said, I guarantee you one thing right off the bat. Jalen Hurts would never play on Sunday, okay? He would never play on Sunday. Can you start to see it, Paul? Can you get that feel?
Listen, I have been in his camp for a long time, and I'm not going to judge or define a career on a spring game, but if you can't get it together in a spring game, when are you going to be able to get it together?
Yeah, I know, but you know what? Alabama's they never had to, all of a sudden now, they got to depend on stellar quarterback play. Never been the issue before. Just a game manager, all we needed, and we can roll, okay? It's changing, okay? That's a sign right there. Now they're requiring stellar quarterback play to be able to win. I'm telling you, man, that is another sign.
But Darriel, if you study the big games Alabama has had in the last couple of years under Jalen Hurts, it's been a roller coaster ride every time, and I think Nick Saban's tired of that.
Jalen Hurts is good with his legs, okay, but he's not going to beat you with his arms. You play him the same way Georgia played. You make him throw the football, and that right there puts you in the better.
So hey, tell me this, Darriel. Because and I realize he only showed so much, but from insiders in Athens, I'm hearing the moon is the goal, is the potential for Fields. What about you?
Well, I'll tell you like this, Paul. Like I said, I told Peter Burns yesterday. Spring games. Okay, first of all, Jake, it was the ones went up against the ones. Fields did not have to go up against the number one.
No, that's true. But that's not it, though. I mean, I'm talking to people that know that program, and I'm hearing unbelievably complimentary things about this young man.
Because he went out there and won spring game and went up against a second.
No. You didn't listen to me. Forget the spring game. I'm just talking about day to day.
We will see. I mean, Scott, who knows, Paul?
Listen, people know.
You know, I want to see him in a big time game. You know, I'm
You'll
not
see him.
sold on him yet because I haven't seen enough of him.
Well,
to really,
but Darriel, once again, you haven't listened to a word I said. I'm talking about people who are there, who watch him practice, who watch him, who watch his demeanor. They watch him. I mean, he's only been there a couple of months, but they're still seeing in him things that these people have not seen in a long time, if ever, on that campus. I'm just telling you.
You know what? I'm not going to beat that drum, okay, because I learned from Auburn, okay, about beating drums like that.
You know we're trying to hype it. We're trying to hype you into this, Darriel.
And then you quarterback look like Johnson did for Auburn if I was staying on his face, and I'm not, you know, he's going to have to earn. Jay, let me say it like this. Jay Fromm will be the starter at Georgia for as long as he's healthy, okay? He will be, especially for this year. I mean, Phil's going to get playing time, but he's still got to earn his stripes. But I want to say this about Jeremy Pruitt. Tennessee people need to understand one thing, okay, with Jeremy Pruitt. What you see is what you get, okay? If you got a problem with somebody that doesn't mind sticking their mind, and you're not going to like Jeremy Pruitt. You don't have to worry about where you stand with him. He will let you know, but I'll tell you one thing. He was the defensive coordinator on the national championship team at Florida State. He was the defensive coordinator on the national championship team at Alabama. He knows what it takes to win. And you just need to let him do his thing, because I think he can have some success up there. I really don't want him to see him having any success. But this ain't a dog and pony show like they had with Bush Jones. He ain't going to be nicey. He ain't going to pat you and tell you how great you are. He's going to expect things out of you, and that's just the way he is. I mean, he's cut and dry, and I kind of like that, but that's just exactly how he is. Now, I want to say one more thing real quick, too. I heard Phyllis call in last week about Jim, okay? And I want to ask you this. Jim is no doubt, I like Jim. You know that. I think Jim's always been a very important part of the show. The thing I don't get with Jim, and I want you to help me understand why Jim doesn't get this. What does it matter how old you are? What does it matter what people say about you that don't know
you know something, Darriel? How many times have you heard me talk to Jim? I try to help him, but he won't listen because he's too stubborn. He's too obstinate. Every time he talks about him not being old, he gets 10 years older.
And you know what? When you get mad about it, all you're doing is playing right into their hands.
He does not understand
Silence is what kills. Silence. Let me get on you.
But Darriel, there is not one person watching this show who cares how old Jim is.
Exactly.
I mean, no one cares. They don't care if he's 16 or 86.
And these people don't even know you. Why would you care about what somebody thinks that doesn't know you? I mean, if you put yourself out there on the platform. What
Jim needs to do is to go back and listen to old Jim tapes from 10, 15 years ago when he was actually a good caller to the show as opposed to a caricature of his former self.
Well, when he gives you a hard time about not defending him, I wish he would like just understand. It's your job to let callers say whatever they want to say.
Sure it is.
I mean, your job to manage the show. And doing that, I mean, that's I don't see how he can expect something like that. That's a little going overboard.
But again, Darriel, you've never been a narcissist, have you?
This is what Jim needs to understand. Okay, an old wise man once told me this. Okay. I hate to say he graduated from Tennessee, but he once told me this. It doesn't matter what they're saying as long as they're saying something. See you, Paul.
Got it. Good stuff.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Squirrel is on the phone. Hello, Squirrel.
Hey, how are you doing today?
Okay.
I'm really disappointed in Tammy's call. She bailed on you. I mean, the first question you asked, boom, she was gone. So, yeah, I hear she's a Mississippi girl now.
I think you're right about that. I don't know. I mean, listen, I think it's fun to talk to her, but that was a typical late stage Tammy call. Bad.
Well, she'll be calling back in a few months talking about how Auburn's going to win the national championship this coming fall. So, just around the corner. And it was ironic. I heard you mentioning Jim and some controversy about Jim's age and things of that nature.
Well, I just said I don't know why Jim cares what anyone thinks.
You're exactly right. And nobody cares about anybody's age on this show. What's so funny about Jim is that he lies about it, and we catch him in lies over and over again. And that's just what's kind of amusing. And speaking of being amusing, I had a poll last week, and I asked a simple question. Based on his voice alone, nothing you've heard about him hanging out with Joe Namath and parking Rocky Marciano's car and things of that nature. Based on his voice alone, how old do you think Jim is? And I got 200 votes. I mean, not 199, not 201. We got 200 votes.
And what were the results?
Well, there was 4 categories: age 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69, or 70 above. I'm going to ask you those 4 questions, then I'm going to tell you the answer. Out of the 40 to 49, out of 200 votes, how many do you think you got for the 40 to 49 range?
No, the question again was, Squirrel?
How old do you think Jim is?
Okay. I'm going to say.
This is like Finebaum family.
Okay, among 40 to 49, I'm going to say. Is there a specific
200 votes?
Is there a so what? I mean, I'm not sure I understand.
Out of 200 votes, he had 4 categories: 40 to 49.
I get it. I'm sorry.
69 and 70 and above. Out of the 40 to 49, out of 200 votes, how many do you think voted for age 40 to 49?
None.
0. Okay, age 50 to 59, how many do you think voted for?
None.
Okay, that's easy. 60 to 69, how many voted for him in that age?
You know, this is where in Vegas you're supposed to cash in your chips, but I'm tripling down. I'm going to say none.
0, and so that means 200 for the 70 or above.
I can't believe it. I won the lottery.
You were close. The actual results are 40 to 49 out of 200 votes. 4 people thought he was in the 40 to 49 range.
Okay.
And Jim probably was one of those votes, so that means 3 actual people.
Hey, Squirrel, stop mumbling. Nobody cares about your stupid polls. I mean, do you have any subject besides knocking on Jim or other voters?
Georgia?
Yeah, the village idiot. Yeah, the guy named Squirrel, Madison, Mississippi.
Oh, my God.
I mean, do you have any subject other than to cut down
Why
on
did you
Jim?
block me, Matt? Matt, why did you block me?
Because I'm tired
I
of
asked
your
you the simple
stupid
question.
polls.
I asked you one simple
Do you
question.
even root
You
for
beat
a
your
college
wife.
football team? I mean,
Pardon me?
you're an idiot, dude.
I actually
You
played
sit
college
here and
football.
bash
Hey,
on
listen.
Jim.
I'm going to say this again. The only way we can do this is if
Okay,
one of you
go ahead.
speaks.
Let
Matt.
Squirrel.
No. You jumped on my call, Matt. Go ahead.
No, you go first there.
Okay, Squirrel, go ahead and respond.
To what? To this idiot? I mean, what do you want me to respond to? He's a buffoon. I mean, I was in the middle of a very serious scientific poll here.
Oh, yeah. Scientific.
But go ahead, Matt. What's on your mind, Matt?
Scientific. I mean,
Hey, Matt, let me ask you a question here. Why are you so defensive of Jim?
I'm not defensive of Jim. What I'm saying is I'm sick and tired of Squirrel. He brings no subject to the show. All he does, he calls about a poll bashing on the guy who we don't know if he can help himself or not.
I've talked about other things, Matt. I've talked about fishing. I've talked about movies. I've talked about sports occasionally.
This ain't a movie show, bud. This is the SEC Network. We talk
I
about
don't need
football.
you to tell me what kind of show it is, Matt. I don't need some newcomer stepping up in here and telling me what I can talk about.
Who do you root for? Who do you root for?
Who do I root for? It's none of your damn business who I root for.
Why are you calling an SEC Network if you don't have a team? I mean,
I
what's
do
your
have a
team
team,
to
Matt.
bash Jim?
Did you want to know
Jim would
Matt?
probably kick your butt.
What was that? Who would kick my butt?
Jim would probably kick your butt. I mean,
man,
you
he
sit
probably
there and
would
bash
because I
on a
couldn't
guy.
hit Jim because
We don't even know if he can.
Hey, Matt, would you allow Squirrel to respond?
Yeah. Okay, let me respond.
Squirrel nuts.
Okay, shut up for a minute and I will, Matt. Jesus Christ. I've been a lifelong Alabama fan. I've met Bear Bryant, shook his hand, had dreams of playing for Bear Bryant, but I didn't have the talent to play for Bear
Bryant. You grew up in Mississippi,
Will you shut up for a minute, Matt?
Did you grow up in Mississippi?
No, I did not. And I grew up
Why are you there now? Because you're making a state of Fort Worth play.
Paul,
Matt, listen, Matt, allow Squirrel to answer the question.
If you're going to jump on the call, I mean, let somebody answer his question, or do you just want to hear yourself? But like I said, Matt, I've been a lifelong. I'm going to come over to Georgia and slap you if you don't shut up.
Bring it, big boy.
I've been a lifelong Alabama fan. I grew up just outside of Knoxville. Sold coats at Tennessee games as a child, but I was never a Tennessee fan. played for East Tennessee State. My kids go to Ole Miss, so I pull for Ole Miss now. Now, you tell me about you, Matt, other than your little flimsy Georgia career. Anything great about Matt?
Well, I've got a name, and it ain't Squirrel Nuts, and I haven't been all over the South. Great. I actually grew up in the state of Georgia. I pulled for the team I grew up. I didn't grow up in Knoxville.
Well, man, you didn't have any athletic ability, man. So you didn't have the ability.
Yeah, you're right. I just played college golf for fun, right, buddy? Yeah, no athletic ability, right, Squirrel Nuts?
I don't know, really. I don't care.
Really, Squirrel? That's what you do. That's
my
point. Is you bash people. You just sit here and cut people down.
I bash people?
You bash on Jim on your stupid
just idiots like you, Matt.
Bash.
Okay,
bring some
thank you.
substance to the show. Do you have any credibility about anything?
No, I have no substance.
You don't?
No
You're
substance,
right.
Matt. We've determined that.
You're like
I'm not on here for substance.
That's why
Matt, it's not about me, Matt. I haven't sent my picture into the Finebaum show like you have, Matt. Okay? If I was that damn egotistical, I'd already have a picture up there, okay?
Egotistical.
Yeah, that's what yeah, exactly.
You don't send your picture into the Finebaum show because you're scared Jim will whip your butt. Because let me tell you something. If someone talks,
Matt. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Listen, I hate to interrupt, but thanks to both of you for making us all a little less intelligent.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a thrill.
We were talking during our break about the importance of spring football attendance, and our next guest has written about that for The Atlantic. He should know quite a bit about spring attendance because not only does he live in Alabama, he teaches, in addition to his writing, at the University of Alabama. Been way too long since we've checked in with Lars Anderson. Lars, how are you, my man?
Hey, it's great to be with you, my old friend. How are you?
We are doing great. And, it's interesting because I referenced the 92,000 that showed up at Saban's first spring game. And you know that because you've probably heard Saban say this so many times, how important that was to what has happened since. Put this all into perspective for us.
Well, if I recall correctly, I think you were there too. I was, and it felt like a big game atmosphere, and it was something that those of us who live in Alabama hadn't experienced for a long, long time. And not only was I there, but Julio Jones was there, Mark Barron was there, Courtney Upshaw was there, Mark Ingram was there, Barrett Jones was there, Marcel Darius was there, Dante Hightower was there, and Terrence Cody was there. And those were the guys who ended up forming Saban's first real recruiting class in 2008. Became the backbone of the team that would win the national title in 2009 and just set the stage for the dynasty. And every recruit who was there, every fan who was there remembers just the electricity of the environment. And big crowds attract big-time attention from recruits. There's no doubt about it. And, you saw the same dynamic happen this year at Nebraska where 86,000 showed up. And it remains to be seen whether Frost can even come close to replicating what Nick Saban has done. I certainly think that's a very tall task. But he can use that momentum and carry that into recruiting because, when you have these 17-year-old kids on visits, standing on the sidelines and just looking up, and up and seeing nothing but fans for what is a practice, they can't help but be impressed. And it's the passion of the fan base, I think, that really is the root of successful programs. And I thought it was impressive too that Georgia was able to attract 82,000 to their spring game, second largest crowd this year. And even Alabama, after all the winning, still had nearly 75,000. So, again, it's not – I know a lot of people think that the size actually doesn't matter of the spring game crowds, but I would argue that it does because it's a reflection of just the intensity of the fan base, and it makes kids want to come and play at that school.
Talking to Lars Anderson. Lars, let's get a little bit deeper because today, unlike some years when recruits could show up, now they can show up officially on these spring games. Does that play a even bigger role into what's going on these spring Saturdays?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I know that Saban caters the whole day around the recruits. You know, and I'm sure you know this. He has a reception at his house following the game, and I've written about this in books and in stories of how the ultimate closer is Miss Terry, his wife, and Miss Terry will get some one-on-one time with the recruits at their house after the spring game. And it's just a whole experience, a whole weekend experience for these kids to get on campus, interact with the other students, get tours of the campus, get tours of all the facilities, and to cap it off with a huge crowd at a spring game, and then an evening at the Saban's house. It's an impressive overall experience for these kids to have.
Couple of things I want to throw at you, Lars, because we haven't spoken lately about Alabama and other schools, but in particular, you've written so much about Nick Saban for your former job at Sports Illustrated and other places as well. You're on that campus a lot. You know him. There's a big debate now about how long will he stay, and there are whispers that opponents are using in relation to his age. This is an old trick. Hasn't hurt him too much yet, I might add. But what do you think? What's your best guess on his longevity at Alabama?
I think he's got at least 5 more years. I do think, and this isn't based on necessarily any personal insight, it's more of a gut feeling and talking to people who orbit around the program. I do think that he thought about hanging it up after this last national championship. I think it was a brief moment, maybe even a talk that he had with Miss Terry. And I think, he very quickly came to the conclusion that he's not ready to step away yet. His internal furnace is still at full blast. He's still just grinding out the long hours. And so I don't think he's going to be walking away anytime soon. And we all saw his reaction to what was sort of reported about Kirby Smart and perhaps him using Nick's age against him in the battle over some recruits. And the fire is still there, very much so, and it is at full blast. And I also think he's concerned about how he would sort of be able to maintain that intensity once he stepped away from the game, because it's just been in and out. It's just been a part of him for so long that every moment is sort of calculated and thought about and planned. And literally, he's a guy who has to make hundreds of decisions each day. And that is something that's very hard to step away from. My last book was with Bruce Arians, the former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. And, Bruce and I had some discussions about whether or not he should retire at the end of the season, because and he ended up obviously retiring, but it's so hard to walk away from something that you've worked all your life to get to the summit of your profession. And again, you're in charge of so much. You have so much responsibility, and everything, is just every day feels so important. Every hour feels important, and then you go from that to just nothing. It's a very hard transition, and I don't think Nick is ready to make that yet, or anytime soon.
Okay, Lars, it was such a great answer. I didn't want to interrupt, but you're a journalism professor, and if I happened to be in your class, you would have scolded me if I didn't come back and follow up. And even momentarily, if we could go back to one thing you said there, because I had not heard this before. You said Nick Saban, even perhaps for a moment, considered stepping away. He'd had a conversation. What can you tell us about that? Because that's even if it was for 5 minutes, it's still very interesting.
That, again, this just comes, and I tried to be clear about this. This comes from not any direct knowledge from Nick or Miss Terry. It's from talking to people who, as I said, orbit in their universe, and that they believe that Nick actually did take some time to think about it. Because going out on top on perhaps the greatest play in college football history, you can make that argument, the biggest comeback and Nick sort of making all the right moves there at the end to win the national title. I think the question was, can it get any better than this? Is this the appropriate time? And again, I don't know if it was just for a very brief amount of time that he thought about it, but I do think, according to the people I've talked to, it was something briefly considered. And ultimately, again, I think that is the way in the rearview mirror now, and I believe that he is going to be there for at least 5 more years.
Well, but it would be common sense, though, even for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 24 hours to have that conversation, because you're right, Lars. If you go out on that, you've tied Bear Bryant. No one's ever going to debate you're the greatest coach in college football history, and your ending was as good as we have ever seen. Before you go, and I know this is very Alabama-centric, but you know what the debate is right now, and it's one of the most controversial conversations that we've had in a while about a quarterback situation, the Jalen Hurts situation, now with his father saying what he did the other day. Everyone seems to have an opinion. What is your sense?
Well, Jalen certainly didn't do himself any favors in the spring game. I mean, he got outplayed by a third-string quarterback who most of us have never even heard of before. And it sounded like a hot mic caught Nick having not so kind words for Jalen on the field after Jalen took off on a run when Nick wanted him to throw the ball. And I also go back to something that Bruce Arians hammered home to me when we were working on the book. By the time a kid is 19 or about 19, 20 years old, you absolutely can't teach him touch or accuracy anymore. It's either has it or he doesn't. And it's clear that Jalen just doesn't have that. You could give Jalen 50 chances to make that throw that Tua did to win the national title, and Jalen probably couldn't hit it maybe once out of 50 just because of the arc it needed to have, just the right pace and everything, the timing to beat the safety, getting over to the wide receiver. And Jalen, that's just not who Jalen is. And I think his dad also didn't do him any favors by making those public statements to Matt Hayes at Bleacher Report right before the game, because it looked like that put more pressure on Jalen. And he looked to me like a quarterback whose confidence has been broken. It looked like he actually regressed from the last few starts of last season. And so I personally think it's going to be Tua. And I know that is not the sort of widely held opinion in Alabama right now, but I think the starter will be Tua. I don't think Jalen will transfer this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he transferred next year if he earns his degree and graduates early, which I think he's on pace to do, so he could move without having to sit out. But I think Saban's going to go with Tua this year.
Lars, it has been too long, and in listening to you, it won't be that long again. It's just great to catch up. Such substantive information. We really appreciate it. Be well, my friend.
All right, thank you, Paul. Take care.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
Larry, what do you think about all this? Good afternoon.
I think it's crazy. I think it's a bunch of loony bugs. I think it's, going after quarterbacks. It's all, man, just a 8-day game,
But would you not agree, though, Larry, that if you look at Jalen against LSU, against Clemson, against Auburn, games that really mattered, he doesn't perform nearly as well against them as he does against most of the high school teams that he plays from non-conference and others?
You got that. I'm agreeing with you, Paul.
Yeah.
And, that's hard for me to do. I mean, I agree with you. He looked terrible Saturday. He looked like he was sleepwalking. And Big Ten John now has ruled me as his little, he had one of them little things that Peter Barnes had set up yesterday, amnesty, and he has ruled me as one of the worst callers.
John Hayes has?
Yeah.
John, is that accurate?
Larry, you clearly have not seen the Finebaum Caller Mock Draft 1.0.
And Big Ten John said I was terrible, and that he actually tried to get 2 amnesties. That little green.
Now, Larry, can you spell amnesty?
Can we go on? Let me spell it at the end. Can we spell amnesty? A-M-E-S-T-I-Y. A-M.
Hold on one second, Larry. I want to make sure. I want to make sure. I think I'm pretty sure I know how to spell it. But give me the spelling again, Larry. I want to put it in my computer here and see what it comes.
Amnesty. A-M-E-S-T-I-F-Y. Amnesty. A-M. Amnesty.
Okay, Larry. I'm going to spot you the A. Okay. A-M. Right.
E-S-T. Amnesty.
No. I'm going to spot you, Larry. I'm going to help you here.
Right.
This is a weird word. A-M-N.
A-M-N.
That's how it starts. A-M-N.
Okay. A-M-N-E-S-T-A-Y. Amnesty. Right?
Wrong. Larry, I'm going to give you the A-M-N-E-S-T, okay?
E-Y. Amnesty.
A-M-N-E-S.
E-S-T-Y. E-Y.
19th trial. Larry got it right.
All right. Yeah, baby. So who's the bad caller now, Jack? How about you, Big Ten, John?
Larry, I'm living in your head, buddy. I said that on the show yesterday because I knew you were watching, and you'd stir about it all night long and call the show upset
You're
today.
not a bad caller if you're number 3 in the mock draft.
And that's the
come
problem.
on.
And that right there puts it into perspective, Larry. The 1.0 came out. You ranked in the top 3, but by tomorrow you are dropping in the first round, my friend. Maybe out of the top 10.
Oh, it's on now. Oh, it's on. And all you're doing this for is just a crawfish your ass out
You
of
know,
that
Larry, hold on a second. I really don't like what I hear. I mean, you and John sound like two little kids that just keep going back and forth and back and forth. I mean, you need to settle this either intellectually.
Golf course. He won't go on the golf course because he's a chicken man. Him and Mark both are chicken men. I didn't mean Mark was ugly, and like the other guy judging you in your underwear. I ain't judging Mark in his underwear. I don't care what happened. But I will say Mark just says ugly things. Now, you and the underwear guy, that's a different story.
Who's the underwear guy?
That said you look good in your underwear. Somebody did.
Who? I did?
Mm-hmm.
Where did someone see me in my underwear?
What's his name? Matt.
Matt has seen me.
He said he looked good. He said, I think Paul's a handsome man that looks good in his
Well,
underwear.
I mean, there is that commercial shoot I did last year that never got published, but I guess he must have seen the prints.
Hey, that boy, look at him. You be careful, Paul. That boy might be trying to break up your marriage, boy. Watch him. But anyways, I don't think that Mark's ugly. He says ugly things about Bama.
Okay, Larry. Once again, like Jalen, you failed in your chance to improve your lot. Thank you for the call.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Nick is up next in Florida. I think we talked. Nick, are you the guy we talked to a couple weeks ago from the Big Ten?
Paul, I certainly am. How are you?
Man, did you make a splash here on your virginal call to the program?
We're going to wipe your butts this year and smoke them. Oh man, you know what, Paul? I woke up the next day. I was on the internet on my news feed, my Google feed from 247 Sports said epic Ohio State fan has call on Paul Finebaum show.
You made it. You made it big time.
Well, let's not get carried away, you know.
Okay, I tend to exaggerate. You are correct.
How you doing, man?
We're doing great. Well, I saw that story, and we tend to see whatever people are saying about us, and we got a pretty big chuckle out of that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, your little cohorts there in the booth that you go to on the side there, those little guys who are your yes men. They had a big field day with that.
My yes men? What do you? We don't have yes men here. Those guys are entitled to say whatever they want to say.
Well, I don't even know who they are.
Okay, well, let me allow me to introduce you to them. Randy Heritage is on the right. If you're watching on TV, if you're listening, he's still
Hello?
on the right.
Hello.
And Big Ten John.
It was another guy. The last time.
John Hayes was probably here, and you're probably thinking of this heavy breathing makes me feel like I'm on a 900 number here. The other guy was Mark Cubelic, probably.
Yeah.
Or Brams.
Or Danny Brams.
John Hayes brought up a good point. He said, why don't Ohio State and Alabama play? And he was right. I just wanted to call back and explain my situation. And, I had a little too much to drink. I will admit that. And
No. Hold on a second. You're telling me that a Finebaum caller was drinking while making a phone call to this show?
Paul, I had the day off. It's my right as an American to do it basically whatever I want.
So so if you don't mind, what were you and how much were you drinking?
I was drinking pretty steadily. I was able to obviously take over 20 minutes of your show. So I was doing pretty good. Not saying that in a braggadocio. How do you spell amnesty, by the way, Larry from Shelby, who you put on right after me? I'd like to meet Larry. If he can find his way out of the trailer that he lives on that's jacked up on cinder blocks, I'll meet him halfway.
Making fun of people who live in mobile homes now, huh?
It's not mobile when it's on cinder blocks, Paul.
Well, a lot of people. I have a lot of friends who live in those homes because they like the community that they live in, and that's in their affordable price range. And what's wrong with that? I mean, you're making fun of people because they can't take off a day and get drunk like you.
He called me a hey boy. He said, "Hey boy, yeah, you come over here with that toilet paper. I'll let you wipe my butt." Yet he's talking to you about you and your underpants. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't like 30 minutes ago they were talking about you. Larry specifically was talking about you in your underwear.
I think that's what he was saying.
Is that what you Alabama fans do down there, Paul? I'm just curious.
Nick, listen. Where I come from, we don't judge people by where they live. We judge people by the content of their character.
Keys, Paul. Please,
good for you.
Spare me.
Say hello
to the judgment.
Say hello to Ernest Hemingway if you see him out walking his dog late at night. Now, my point is that most people that I know are good people. They don't call up radio shows drunk or sober. Frankly, you were funnier when you were drunk. And, disparage people because, who appointed you the poet laureate of this radio show? Can you explain that to me?
Well...
and by the way, Nick, and I'm not going to make fun of you if you're tied up to an oxygen tent. My grandmother was much of her late life as my mother was. But what's the deal with this heavy breathing, man?
Well, I'm on speakerphone. So.
Well, is it possible that you could come off the speakerphone? You're on a national radio and television show here, bud. Or do you need it? Or do you need your hand? Or do you need your hands free while you're making this phone call?
No, sir. You are correct, and I respect what you do. I respect Paul Finebaum as a football guy.
The oxygen, please.
Do you think Larry knows where Nick Saban went to college? Do you think Larry has any idea where Nick Saban is from? And I got a lot of feedback.
Well, someone tells me that Nick
Snowbird.
Larry probably knows.
Snowbird.
Okay, you obviously know where Nick Saban's from, right?
Of course I do. I'm from Cleveland. Of course I know where Nick Saban went to college, and so did Lou Holtz, and so did Joe Walsh of the Eagles. By the way, they went to Kent State. We're also 4 people were massacred by the Ohio National Guard.
Yeah, 10 soldiers and Nixon's coming. I heard the song.
That's right. Correct. But anyway, how about those Buckeyes? Are you ready for this? I think this
How about what Buckeyes?
If it doesn't happen...
I mean, listen. Which Buckeyes do you want to talk about? The one with Ezekiel Elliott, who choked away a national championship with the best team Urban Meyer will ever have in 2015, the 2016 version, which lost 31-0 to Clemson, or last year's version, which lost by 31 at Iowa. Which Buckeyes team would you like to talk about?
Well, I mean, if you want to go back and quote the past 5 years, like
no, I quoted the last three. Nick, let me just end here with this admonition. Try harder. This was a total fail, as your first call was. Adios, amigos.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We have a Southerner on board here. He is Cole Cubelic, the former star at Auburn. He now works for the SEC Network to start a new show on WJOX in Birmingham, and we're happy to have Cole on. Cole, how's the new show going? Good afternoon.
Doing well, Paul. It's great. A lot of fun. Enjoying being on in Birmingham in that market that I know you're very familiar with, but glad to be back with you. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate it. We won't waste any time because I'm sure on your program this week and perhaps for many weeks to come, the question surrounds and revolves around Jalen Hurts. You cover this league. You do games every Saturday night. What gives?
I think it's a story that's intriguing, and obviously the storylines around it continue to mount. I have been a guy that has been a supporter of Jalen Hurts. I've been very appreciative of what kind of football player that he's been for Alabama. I think there were things that he did the last two seasons that didn't involve throwing the football that a lot of fans didn't understand or didn't appreciate. It made that offense very difficult to defend. But I look at what's being stacked up against him now, and with what Tua Tagovailoa came in and did in that national championship game, the fact that we didn't see Tagovailoa be able to go out in the spring game, do well or not do well, the fact that his little brother commits to the school just before the spring game kicks off, and the fact that Jalen Hurts takes the field and looks very, just did not look impressive at all, I think begins to point to the fact that he potentially might not be a part of that roster. With what his father came out and said with Matt Hayes and Bleacher Report last week, potentially naming him as the biggest free agent in college football history, when he's slated to graduate, the fact that he has a redshirt year still under his belt that he could take if need be. The young man has played quarterback in this league. He's been successful doing it. He knows what it's like. He understands that feeling. For him to take a back seat or not want to take a back seat would be understandable to me. The hard part for me, Paul, the thing that I struggle with is Jalen Hurts' demeanor, his attitude, the way he carries himself, and what kind of individual and human being he has been. All of that would point to him taking a lesser role with this football team and being part of it moving forward. But the more things happen, hearing Nick Saban audibly say that he was frustrated with the lack of progression from Jalen Hurts during that spring game, and just the fact that it doesn't look as though he's progressing, even though I know that he has spent more time in that facility over the last 2 months during spring football than his entire career, and you don't see things going in the right direction, is concerning to me. And I think the question is no longer, will it be Jalen Hurts or Tua Tagovailoa taking the majority of reps? The big question for me is, will Jalen Hurts be on that Alabama roster when they kick off against Louisville?
And before I get to that answer, here's a young man who has started 4 playoff games. He's played for the national championship. I mean, why would anything affect him negatively in a spring football game, other than the fact that his progression has been stunted?
I don't think it's just the spring football game. I think what I took away from the spring football game is not necessarily, well, he didn't perform well in a scrimmage, so he probably doesn't have a chance to get playing time. What I took away from that is the fact that he's not progressing. I attribute a lack of confidence to that. And the fact that he's not able to go out and release the football at certain points, when he's in the pocket, when he's leaving the pocket, when he's going through his reads, that to me shows a guy that potentially has lost his confidence. And if that's the case, how do you really progress? How do you get better? If you don't have the confidence to go out and let the football rip as a quarterback, I don't really see it getting too much better, because that's one of the biggest hurdles that you have to overcome to be able to play college football at any position. And if that's something that's stunting his growth, I'm not necessarily sure that he gets over it looking over his shoulder or looking over the shoulder of a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, who I think the family statement made that they're not going anywhere. The fact that his little brother committed and they have moved to Alabama and they're going to be there and they're going to be a part of that football program. So to me, it's just that the lack of confidence is something that seems to be creeping into Jalen Hurts' mind, and something I never thought I would say because of his demeanor and the way he had handled himself in some of those big games that you mentioned.
You host a show there, you live there, you hear people every day, and I'm really curious, in that state, Cole, is there a prevailing wind, is there a conventional wisdom from the Alabama fans on Jalen Hurts' future? What do they say, and what do they really want to happen? I'm not talking about the ones who just speak from the hymnal or sing from the hymnal. The rank and file Tide fans, what do they want?
There is a smaller portion of the fan base that seems to be very appreciative of what he's done and what he means to that program and how he's carried himself and what kind of an individual he is. But I think the diehard football fan and most Alabama fans that we connect with knows what Tua is, has an idea what Tua is capable of, realizes that the ceiling is much higher for Tua Tagovailoa, regardless of the fact that they're basing on a very small piece of actual football played. They want what could be better, and they believe that Tua is better. And I don't think that they really care one way or the other if he transfers, if he leaves, if he stays, if he goes. They might tell you that they want him to stay, but they're not going to tell you that they want him to stay and they want Tua to be on the bench because they think Tua is the guy that gives them the best opportunity to win football games. So most fans appreciate Jalen Hurts, but when it really comes down to it, they want Tua Tagovailoa on the field taking snaps.
Before you go, the second story here in a lot of places has had to do with Jeremy Pruitt and what he said, what he meant. Who knows exactly what he was talking about other than that's the last time we have heard from him. What's your view of the new coach at Tennessee and his apparent shot at the fans who didn't come to the spring game?
I can't think of a fan base that's more deserving of having a shot directed at them. One that just because they did not approve of a potential, not a hire, Paul, a potential head coaching hire, that they form a groundswell and uproar against the administration to potentially go hire someone else, none of which most could name who that replacement should be. And then the time Jeremy Pruitt falls into place, you don't see an outpouring of support at the spring game. I think that was Jeremy Pruitt's way of saying, hey, this is what you guys asked for. This is what you done. You got Phil back in as the AD. You didn't get the guy that you didn't want as head coach. Now I'm taking over. Get in here and support this football team. And I think he wants Tennessee football to mean a lot to a lot of people. He's seen how it's done. He's been at Georgia under Mark Richt. He's been at FSU under Jimbo Fisher. He's been at Alabama under Nick Saban. He understands that recruiting is vital. Fan support is vital to recruiting. It does make a difference, and he wants that program to be great. So I think this is Jeremy Pruitt saying, if we're going to be great, we need to be great in every aspect of our program, administratively, fan support in the spring game, obviously our players not quitting in the spring game, and getting as much talent and the best coaching staff here as possible.
Cole Cubelic, always great to catch up. Thank you, Cole. Be well.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. The Paul Finebaum Show airs weekdays on the SEC Network, beginning at 3 Eastern.